Hello everyone, this is Piers Morgan, and I need to tell you something right at the top of this broadcast. What I'm about to share with you has been handed to me in the last several hours. A package of documents, photographs, testimony, all of it compiled as part of legal proceedings that until this morning were under a strict confidentiality agreement. That agreement has now been breached. And what's inside these files is absolutely staggering. I'm talking about official records. I'm talking about sworn statements given under oath. I'm talking about photographic evidence that calls into question everything we've been told about Meghan Markle's pregnancies. And I do mean everything. What this reveals changes everything. The narrative that's been carefully constructed, the story that's been sold to millions of people around the world, it's falling apart. Before we go any further, I need you to subscribe right now. Because what you're about to hear is not being reported clearly anywhere else. The mainstream media won't touch this. They're too invested in protecting her. So subscribe, because this is where you'll get the full story. Right? Let me start at the beginning. Last night, a legal firm based in London submitted a filing to the High Court. The case involves a dispute between former palace staff and an unnamed party. The details of the case itself are still sealed. But attached to that filing were exhibits, dozens of them. And those exhibits include internal palace correspondence, photographic evidence, medical records, and testimony from multiple individuals who were in direct contact with Meghan during both of her pregnancies. I've spent the entire night going through this material, and I have to tell you, it is damning, absolutely damning. Let's start with the photographs. There are 63 images in total, 63. They cover a period from November 2018 through April 2019. That's the window when Meghan was supposedly pregnant with Archie. Now, these aren't tabloid photos. These are high-resolution images taken by security personnel, by household staff, by people who were literally standing a few feet away from her. And what they show is deeply disturbing. In at least 20 of these images, you can see clear inconsistencies in the shape and size of her pregnancy bump. I'm not talking about minor variations. I'm talking about dramatic differences from one day to the next. There's one photograph taken on January 8th, 2019. Meghan is attending a private function at Kensington Palace, and in that image, the bump is positioned high on her abdomen. It's a specific shape, rounded, prominent. Now look at this. 3 days later, January 11th, she's photographed at another event, and the bump has changed entirely. It's lower, it's flatter at the top. The curvature is different. 3 days, think about that. In 3 days, a pregnancy doesn't shift like that. It doesn't restructure itself. But that's what these images show. And it gets worse because there are multiple photographs where you can actually see lines of demarcation, edges, seams. There's an image from February 2019 where Meghan is bending slightly forward and you can see a visible line across her midsection. It's right there. And in another image taken in March, you can see what appears to be a prosthetic edge showing above her skirt. It's subtle, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. And these images have been reviewed by forensic analysts. 3 separate analysts looked at these photos independently, and all 3 came to the same conclusion. The object visible in these images is not consistent with natural pregnancy. Now, let me read you something. This is from an internal memo written by a senior member of the royal household staff. It's dated March 15th, 2019, and I'm going to read this word for word. Quote, I must formally document my concerns regarding the Duchess's refusal to allow standard medical protocols. On 3 separate occasions this month, appointments with the royal physician were cancelled at the last minute without adequate explanation. When I inquired directly, I was told by her private secretary that the Duchess prefers to manage her prenatal care privately and that further questions would not be welcome. This is highly irregular and constitutes a departure from established practice. End quote. Read that again. 3 cancelled appointments, no explanation, and a direct warning to stop asking questions. Now, why would someone do that? Why would a pregnant woman, especially someone in her position, refuse basic medical oversight unless she had something to hide? But here's the part no one expected. The documents also include text messages, thousands of them. And these messages are between Meghan and a man whose full name is redacted in the filings. We can see his first name, Daniel. That's it. But the content of these messages is explosive. They span from October 2017 all the way through to June 2023. That's nearly 6 years of continuous communication. And the nature of the messages is unambiguous. I'm not going to read the most explicit ones, but what I will tell you is that these are not friendly exchanges. These are intimate messages, romantic messages, sexual messages. Let me give you a specific example. On December 23rd, 2018, Meghan sends a message to this individual. Quote, I can't stop thinking about you. I need to see you. This whole thing is suffocating me. I need you." End quote. December 23rd. That's 2 days before Christmas. She's supposedly happily married. She's supposedly pregnant with Harry's child. And she's sending messages like this to another man. And there's a reply. Same day. Quote, "I know, I feel the same way. After the holiday, I'll figure it out, I promise." End quote. After the holiday. And guess what happened after the holiday? On January 3rd, 2019, Meghan travelled to New York. Officially, it was for meetings related to her patronages. That's what the palace said. But according to these documents, she met with Daniel. There are hotel records, there are credit card receipts, there's a photograph taken in the lobby of the Surrey Hotel in Manhattan. And while Daniel's face is obscured in the image, you can clearly see Meghan. You can see the physical proximity. You can see them standing close together. And this wasn't an isolated incident. The documents detail at least 12 separate meetings over a 3-year period. Los Angeles, London, Toronto, New York, Paris. And in every single case, these meetings coincide with trips that Meghan took without Harry. Trips that were explained away as work commitments or personal errands. But according to flight manifests and hotel records, Daniel was in the same city at the same time. Same hotels in some cases. Think about that. Same hotels. Now let's talk about the financial aspect, because these documents also include bank records, wire transfers, and what they show is a pattern of payments from accounts controlled by Meghan to an account controlled by Daniel. We're talking about substantial amounts. $45,000 in March 2019, $60,000 in July 2019, $38,000 in November 2020, and the pattern continues. Over 3 years, the total amount transferred is in excess of $400,000. $400,000. And what was this money for? The stated purpose, when there is a stated purpose on the transfer documentation, is always vague. Consulting services, professional fees, advisory work, but there's no evidence of any legitimate business arrangement. No contracts, no formal agreements, no work product, nothing that would justify this level of payment. So what was it really for? You tell me. Let's move to the second pregnancy, because if you thought the first one raised questions, the second one is even more problematic. Meghan announced her second pregnancy in February 2021, and she gave birth supposedly on June 4th of that year. But here's what the documents reveal. In January 2021, a medical professional based in Los Angeles was approached by an intermediary representing Meghan. This medical professional, whose credentials are confirmed in the filings and whose testimony was given under oath, states that they were asked to provide backdated medical documentation supporting a pregnancy. Let me say that again. Backdated documentation for a pregnancy that this doctor had never verified or monitored. According to this testimony, the doctor refused. And when they refused, they were offered $200,000 to falsify medical records. The doctor refused again. And shortly after that refusal, they received a legal letter from Meghan's attorneys threatening action if they disclosed the approach to anyone. That letter is included in these documents. It's right here. And it explicitly states that any disclosure would result in immediate legal consequences. But it doesn't stop there, because the documents also include photographs from Meghan's second pregnancy. And just like the first time, the inconsistencies are glaring. There are images from March 2021 where the bump appears disproportionately large for her frame. There are images from April where it appears smaller. There are images from May where the positioning has shifted again. And there's one particularly revealing photograph from late May. Meghan is sitting down. And you can see what appears to be a crease or fold in the prosthetic. It's visible just above her waistline. Multiple forensic experts have examined this image, and their conclusion is unanimous. The object in the photograph is not human tissue. Now let me tell you about the flight logs, because this is where the pattern becomes undeniable. During Meghan's second pregnancy, she made 7 trips to California. 7. And none of these trips were publicly disclosed. They don't appear on any official schedule. They weren't reported in the media, but the flight manifests are in these documents, private jet travel. And on 5 of those 7 trips, Daniel was also in California, same dates. And on 2 occasions, he was on the same flight, same aircraft, traveling together while she's supposedly pregnant with Harry's child. And where did she stay during these trips? According to the documents, she stayed at a private estate in Montecito, an estate that's owned by a shell corporation registered in Delaware. Delaware, and when investigators attempted to trace the ownership of that corporation, they encountered multiple layers of holding companies and offshore accounts, deliberately obscured, deliberately hidden. But what they did discover is that Daniel is listed as an authorized user of the property. He has access, he has keys, he's been there multiple times, read that again. Meghan is traveling secretly to California. She's staying at a property where her alleged lover has full access, and she's doing this while pregnant, while married, while presenting herself to the world as a devoted wife and mother. But here's the part that I find most disturbing. The documents include testimony from a former member of Meghan's security team. This individual, who worked for her from late 2020 through early 2022, describes multiple occasions where Meghan gave explicit instructions to ensure that Harry was not informed of her whereabouts. Quote, "On at least 6 occasions, the Duchess instructed me directly to provide Mr. Markle," referring to Harry, "with false information about her location and activities. I was told that this was for security reasons, but it became clear over time that the real purpose was to conceal meetings with an individual identified to me only as D." End quote. This is under oath. This is contemporaneous notes from someone who was there, someone who witnessed this firsthand. And what they're describing is a systematic pattern of deception. Meghan was lying to Harry repeatedly about where she was, about who she was with, about what she was doing. Now, let's talk about the births themselves, because here's the thing. There is no independent verification of either birth. None. For Archie, the palace announced that Meghan had given birth at Portland Hospital in London, but there's no public record of her admission. There's no record of her discharge. There's no confirmation from the hospital itself. Everything was kept private. Everything was controlled. And the same thing happened with the second child. No hospital confirmation, no independent medical verification, just announcements from Meghan's representatives. And why is that? Why all the secrecy? If these were normal, straightforward births, why wasn't there transparency? Why weren't the standard protocols followed? You have to ask yourself that question, because the answer is obvious. There was something to hide. Let me walk you through the timeline one more time, because I want you to see how all of this connects. Late 2017, Meghan begins a relationship with Daniel. 2018, she marries Harry and almost immediately announces a pregnancy. Throughout that pregnancy, there are physical inconsistencies documented in photographs. There are cancelled medical appointments. There are secret meetings with Daniel. May 2019, she supposedly gives birth to Archie, but there's no independent verification. 2021, she announces a second pregnancy. Again, physical inconsistencies. Again, secret travel to California. Again, meetings with Daniel. Again, massive financial transfers. June 2021, she supposedly gives birth again, and again, no independent verification. And all the while, she's positioning herself as a victim. She's telling the world that she was mistreated by the royal family. She's crying on television about how difficult her life has been. She's building a brand around suffering and resilience. But these documents tell a completely different story. They tell a story of manipulation, of deception, of betrayal. If this were anyone else, if this were a politician or a business leader or anyone in public life, this would be the end of their career. This would be front page news for months. There would be investigations. There would be legal action. There would be consequences. But because it's Meghan Markle, because she's protected by powerful people in the media and in Hollywood, there's hesitation. There's reluctance to pursue the story. And that's exactly why this matters. This isn't about one document. This isn't about one photograph or one suspicious message. This is about behavior. This is about a pattern of lies that spans years. This is about someone who has manipulated everyone around her in order to secure wealth, status, and power. And the evidence is overwhelming. You have to ask why. Why would someone go to such lengths? And I think the answer is clear. Because she could. Because she knew that people wanted to believe her. Because she knew that if she positioned herself as a victim, if she claimed that she was being persecuted, that a certain segment of the public would rally to her defense without asking questions. And it worked. For years it worked, but now the truth is coming out, and it's uglier than anyone imagined. The long-term implications of this are profound. We're talking about potential legal proceedings. We're talking about custody battles. We're talking about financial settlements. We're talking about the complete destruction of Meghan's public image. And Harry, what does this mean for him? If even a fraction of what's in these documents is accurate, he's been living a lie. He's been defending someone who was betraying him from the very beginning. He's walked away from his family, from his country, from his responsibilities for someone who was lying to him the entire time. And that's the real tragedy here, not Meghan's downfall. That's inevitable now. The real tragedy is the damage she's done to everyone around her, the people who trusted her, the people who defended her, the people whose lives have been upended because of her lies. So what happens now? That's up to all of us, because the mainstream media isn't going to cover this properly. They're going to downplay it. They're going to question the authenticity of these documents, even though they're part of official legal filings. They're going to protect Meghan because that's what they've always done. But we don't have to accept that. We can demand answers. We can share this information. We can refuse to let this be buried. This matters. It matters because truth matters. It matters because we can't allow people to manipulate reality and escape consequences. It matters because if Meghan can get away with this level of deception, then what does that say about the rest of us? What does that say about accountability? Thanks for watching. Subscribe, share this, and stay alert. Don't let anyone tell you this doesn't matter. Don't let anyone dismiss this as gossip or speculation, because these are documents, these are photographs, these is testimony given under oath. This is evidence, and it proves that Meghan Markle has been lying to the world. That matters. It matters more than you know. So share this video, talk about it, demand that the questions be answered, and don't let them tell you it's not important, because it is.